time for Overtime.
Stop what you're doing and listen.
In the world of sports, it's all about the playmakers in today's headlines, from locals to the pros, with interviews from local standouts and sports all-stars across the country that will have you talking.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're here with the national champions.
Hear from coaches, the players, sports analysts, and broadcasters who are a part of the action every day. Overtime, now with Bert Remien on ESPN 102.3 AM 1000 KSOO, Sioux Falls sports leader.
The sports scenes to tell you about as well. We are off and running with the Monday edition of Overtime. Thanks so much for being with us as always. My, oh my, a sweet day to be a fan of the Minnesota Timberwolves. A sweet weekend for you Minnesota Vikings fans out there. How did you think the rest of the weekend went in the NFL draft? There were some big-time players that landed on the Minnesota Vikings roster, even though they didn't have a whole lot of picks remaining following 2 trades up in round number 1. The Vikings, a big winner in my book, and I don't say that very easily. I don't say anything nice about the Vikings very easily, but I do like what Minnesota did this year in the NFL draft. We'll be chatting and wrapping up the NFL draft, handing out some draft grades as well later on in the show. First things first, though, coming up very soon on the program, less than 20 minutes away, we'll be chatting with Augustana baseball head coach Tim Huber. His team's recent long, absurdly long win streak, all sorts of dingers in there, double-digit scoring, great pitching. It came to a close over the weekend as far as the big win streak goes, but we'll talk about the remainder of the season. Just 6 games left, including one coming up this afternoon out in Mankato. We'll break down the season, what's ahead, what the keys are to finishing strong and playing their best when they need to come the postseason. Latest from the NBA, including an injury update on head coach Chris Finch. He goes down in an otherwise up night for Minnesota and Minnesota Pro Sports. And, of course, the Timberwolves. We'll talk about Chris Finch and get the latest injury update there and the latest odds for Minnesota. Suddenly, people are waking up. Just like I told you guys when the playoffs started, the Suns were favored in the first round series, and I said, that's a mistake. I certainly did not say they're going to get swept. I did not see that coming, and who would have thought that the Minnesota Timberwolves would have a rest advantage on the presumptive next round opponent in 2-seed Denver. I did not see that coming. It's a big win. Minnesota can regroup. Hopefully Chris Finch is okay after a run-in with a player of his own last night. Pretty scary moment there for the head coach of Minnesota. Get you that latest update. Everything you need to know from the NBA coming up in about a half hour. At the end of this hour, we'll be recapping the NFL draft with one of our favorites, Cole Thompson of Fan Nation, Sports Map Radio, and also newly minted with a Texans blog. He is with Texans Wire now. Cole Thompson will break down the Houston Texans draft, the Minnesota Vikings draft. I'll ask him some questions about quarterbacks and their fits. How soon could we see J.J. McCarthy actually play meaningful snaps in the Twin Cities? Cole Thompson has it all for us coming up around 11:40. Hour number 2 today, headlines and highlights. It's a Monday, so I get you your sports history today on this day in sports history right around 12:20. Latest from the NFL, draft grades, and more. 12:30, the time for that. 12:45, we round out the show with the latest and greatest in the good, the bad, and the ugly. Now on to your scorecard. NHL Finals from yesterday. The Avs are running away with the series. They take a 3-1 series lead over Winnipeg with a dominant 5-1 win in Denver. 3-1 the series lead there for the Avs. Elsewhere, down to the wire, but Vancouver gets the job done on the road, and they take a stranglehold lead on the series over Nashville, 3-1.
Quinn Hughes, long shot, missed high and wide of the target, and Cole holds in right point again. Zadorov behind the net for Garland in front. Lindholm scores! Elias Lindholm wins it for the Canucks. 102 into overtime. He beats UC Soros from the slot, and Vancouver has a stranglehold on this series. They lead it 3-1, and they win it in Nashville 4-3.
Quite the win there for Vancouver yesterday. That was in overtime. The Canucks lead at 3-1. Audio there courtesy of SN 650. Elsewhere, the Rangers, the first team to be moving on. They were my Stanley Cup final champion pick, and they get the job done yesterday in D.C.
Igor Shesterkin, who fires it into the far boards. 2-1. One more save by Shesterkin. Bring out the brooms. Rangers sweep the series 4-0, and they're off to the second round.
4-2 the final yesterday. On to the second round indeed for the Rangers. Edmonton inches closer to that as well. 1-0 win on the road in L.A. over the Kings. The Oilers now take a 3-1 lead in that series. Tonight in the NHL, we got a pair of games going on. Lightning at Panthers from Florida. 6 o'clock on ESPN. Panthers hold a 3-1 advantage in that series. Stars at the Golden Knights from Vegas. 8:30 on ESPN. Vegas has a 2-1 series advantage. NBA Finals from yesterday. Jalen Brunson, pretty darn good. 47 points, 10 assists, and a 97-92 win on the road for the New York Knicks over Philly. New York now 3-1 lead there. Elsewhere, James Harden doing James Harden stuff. When you think he's good, he's bad. When you think he's bad, he's good. Been pretty darn good lately. 33 points, 6 rebounds, 7 assists as the Clippers move on. And with another win, they tie the series 2 games apiece. 33 points for Harden. And that's there's a couple points later in the contest. 116-111 the final.
James at the logo, dribbles to the right hand, hip high. He's got the last 4. Switched on by Kleva with 4 seconds. Attacks the paint. Another lefty layup, and he puts it down. James Harden taking Dallas to school on a Sunday afternoon. 104-100. Timeout Dallas.
4-point lead then. It's a 5-point win in the end. 116-111. That series pretty good so far. Tied 2 games apiece. Milwaukee and Indiana. And it was the Pacers kind of day. 126-113. Indiana takes the lead in that series, or extends the lead rather, 3-1. And then the big story you've all been waiting for. The Minnesota Timberwolves. Anthony Edwards is a star. We know that, but America starting to find out just how good Edwards is.
113-111. Ant one-on-one against Bradley Beal. Beats some baseline. Rises and hammers. What a finish by Anthony Edwards. Big-time dunk by Ant. 27 points in the second half. And he rocks the rim, and oohs and ahs even from the Suns fans here in the building.
Quiets down Phoenix with that hammer of a dunk late in the contest. Beautiful defensive sequence before that, which included a steal. They come down. You hear Phoenix rise on their feet. Anthony Edwards' crafty move to the basket and an absolutely disgusting hammer down there on the dunk. Anthony Edwards, 40 points, 9 rebounds, 6 assists. Minnesota wins the series 4-0. It is their first ever sweep of a series, and one is at first in quite some time for Minnesota Pro Sports as well. Final score yesterday, 122-116. And here's the latest update on Timberwolves head coach Chris Finch. Everything was up last night for Minnesota, except the coach goes down. Tough collision with a player in progress. And Coach Chris Finch, here's the latest.
I think that they're evaluating him now. We don't know anything for sure. Obviously took a hit to his lower leg, kind of like hockey, right? Lower body injury. But they're looking at him now. It was great, though. The whole team went down to the medical room, and he's obviously in good spirits, and so are the guys. So.
Hoping for the best moving forward for Chris Finch. Obviously, still a ton of work to do moving forward in the NBA playoffs. First sweep for the Minnesota Timberwolves in their history, on the right side of the sweep, rather. Here's Jay Williams on the other side. With every good story, there's a bad on the other side. And for the Phoenix Suns, pretty darn ugly to get swept out of the first round. Here's Jay Williams on who's to blame.
It's going to be the players. It's always going to be the players. And you can
fire the players?
Well, no, I'm not going to fire the players. I mean, but the details are roster construction. We could talk about them not having a leader and a bona fide guard, them having big issues with Nurkic not having the size, Minnesota being a better team. But when you have the star power of Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal on the same team, it's just they didn't morph correctly.
They did not morph correctly, and it leads to an early postseason exit. Anthony Edwards and the Timberwolves moving on to round number 2. They'll likely see Denver there, although that series did not get finished over the weekend. Looking to finish it tonight from Denver. That game gets going at 9 o'clock on TNT. Denver holds a 3-1 series advantage. Celtics at Heat Game 4 from Miami, 6:30 on TNT tonight. And Boston holds a 2-1 series advantage. Oklahoma City also going for a sweep of their own on the road in New Orleans tonight, 7:30 on NBC. NBA TV. Major League Baseball finals yesterday. The Chicago Cubs dropped the ball literally late on a pop-up, and it was Dansby Swanson who let it go through his glove. The Red Sox win the game. Here's how the Red Sox got a big lead early.
Runners at second and third, the 1-0. Swinging a high drive into the gap. In right center field. This will score them both. Into the triangle. Here goes Duran. He's blazing around second. Into third. It's a two-run triple. Duran breaks it open, and it's 4-0 Red Sox.
Cubs would make it interesting, but they fall in Boston. 5-4 the final yesterday. Cubbies' new record 17-11. Other side finals here. Cleveland and Atlanta. This one goes to extras, and the Braves win it at home.
The pitch. Bounce up the middle. Might get through. It does! Base hit. Rattle around third. Here comes the throw. It's late. Braves win. Austin Riley comes through with the winner.
Braves doing the Twins a favor yesterday. 4-3 the final. 10 innings there. Cleveland, the division-leading Guardians, now 19-9. Other finals, Detroit over Kansas City 4-1. St. Louis lost to the Mets on the road 4-2. Yankees put 15 runs up in Milwaukee against the Brewers. 15-5 is the final score. 17-10 the new record for Milwaukee. Tampa Bay loses to Chicago. The White Sox earn victory number 6 on the season. 4-2 the final. And the Minnesota Twins keep on winning. That was the case yesterday. Dominant effort on the road over the Angels, 11-5 the final.
Breaking ball hit sharply through the drawn-in infield for an RBI base hit. Farmer takes the turn. He's coming home. The throw to the plate beats him by a mile, but it's dropped by the catcher, Ohapi. It was a little up the line, and the Twins score 2 on an RBI base hit to left for Austin Martin. They lead 3-0.
3-0 was the score early, 11-5 the score that went final. Minnesota now 14-13. Your Twins have won 7 straight games. Pablo Lopez the win yesterday. He's 2-2. And your latest AL Central standings, Cleveland still the top team, 19-9. 2.5 games back are the Royals at 17-12. 3 games back, the Tigers 16-12. And the Twins suddenly surging 4.5 games back, 14-13 the overall record. And the Chicago White Sox are in the cellar. They will be in the cellar moving forward. 6-22 their record, already 13 games back of the first place Cleveland Guardians. Today and tonight in Major League Baseball, here's some of the matchups. Cardinals at Tigers, Royals at Blue Jays, Cubs at Mets, Rays at Brewers. Twins are in Chicago, matching up with the White Sox once again on the road. 6 o'clock pregame, 6:40 the official start time right here on the Minnesota Twins radio network. You can also watch the game tonight on Fox Sports 1. NFL draft concluded on Saturday. We'll get to the area angles from the draft, including Mason McCormick, Isaiah Davis, Miles Harden, and other area prospects finding NFL homes and NFL opportunities. Just in case you missed it or slept under a rock throughout the weekend, Caleb Williams, the top overall pick Thursday night, Jaden Daniels second, Drake May third, Marvin Harrison Jr. fourth. Chargers took Joe Alt, the Notre Dame tackle, at number 5 overall. The Atlanta Falcons made a lot of heads turn and made a lot of heads shake as well with their selection of Michael Penix at number 8 overall. Mike Tannenbaum, slightly tongue-in-cheek, was asked which quarterback in Atlanta makes a trade request first, Michael Penix Jr. or Kirk Cousins.
Neither quarterback wants to be there. Which one is going to request a trade first? If you're Kirk Cousins, you signed up 5.5 weeks ago. He knows that the first time he throws a bad pass that they'll be calling for Michael Penix. Why not go to Vegas and throw it to Brock Bowers and Devontae Adams? If you're Michael Penix, every rookie quarterback in the world has one thought in my mind. It's a race to the second contract. Michael Penix is only going to get that if he plays reasonably well, which I think he will, but he's not going to do it sitting on the bench.
Mike Tannenbaum there. I don't think it's a 4-year wait, by the way, for Michael Penix Jr. behind Kirk Cousins. I believe it's a 2-year, because if you look at the structure of the contract, there is an out 2 years in, and the Falcons will eat some dead money. But if things aren't going well with Kirk, or if things are going well but they're not winning the big games on the big stage, sounds pretty familiar, Vikings fans, Michael Penix could be the guy after the 2025 NFL season for the Atlanta Falcons. It's a risk worth taking. Was it worth the 8th pick? Absolutely not. Was it worth alienating your quarterback before he even takes a snap with your team? Absolutely not. The Falcons, the worst NFL draft performer among all 32 teams over the weekend. Now, as far as the whole NFL draft goes, of course, one position is the focus, says Bill Barnwell, and it's a familiar one.
I mean, you have 6 quarterbacks don't believe we've seen that since the Dan Marino draft, the Dan Marino draft, 41 years ago now. The 6 guys in the top 12. I mean, this was a draft where, with 3 guys we knew for sure, probably a 4th guy in J.J. McCarthy became pretty clear early on. There going to be 4 first-round picks, maybe even 4 quarterbacks going in the top 10, which seemed crazy. We got 6 in the first 12 picks, guys, and it is really remarkable to me.
Pretty interesting, especially from our area team's angle. The Denver Broncos get Bo Nix. Of course, the Minnesota Vikings land their signal caller of the future in J.J. McCarthy. The Bears have a new quarterback. The NFC North all of a sudden looks like it's going to roar in 2024. Should be a lot of fun as the NFL draft came to a close on Saturday. NASCAR race over the weekend. Denny Hamlin won at Dover. That's his 3rd win of the regular season, 4th win overall. Next race coming up Sunday at Kansas, 2 o'clock on Fox Sports 1. PGA Tour Golf, Rory McIlroy and Shane Lowry team up for a duo victory in the Zurich Classic. Came via playoff. Next up, the CJ Cup, Byron Nelson from McKinney, Texas. And the UFL, 4 games coming up this weekend. Saturday, Stallions at Showboats, Roughnecks at Battlehawks. Sunday, Renegades at Panthers, Brahmas at Defenders. The slate for the United Football League. We start out your Reliabank headlines of the day in hour number 1 with some unfortunate news very close to home. The Sioux Falls Stampede Hockey Club has announced today that the contract for head coach Eric Rude will not be renewed for the upcoming season. Quote, these decisions are never easy, but the organization as a whole felt that the change needed to be made, stated Stampede Vice President of Hockey Operations and General Manager Tony Gasparini. We thank Eric for all his hard work and dedication over the last 2 seasons. Wish him nothing but the best in his future endeavors. Rude posted a record of 51, 59, and 14 in 2 years behind the bench for the Herd. The club qualified for the playoffs this season, losing in round 1 in 3 games to the Tri-City Storm. The Stampede will make an announcement early next week on a new head coach. We talked about some of the draft opportunities moments ago for those in Sioux Falls, from Sioux Falls, born in Sioux Falls or otherwise, and extending out to Brookings and out down south to Vermilion as well. We'll start here in Sioux Falls, though. A pair of Augustana Vikings have a pro opportunity. Casey Bauman, the quarterback, Blake Larson, the offensive lineman of the 2023 NSIC champion football team, put pen to paper and will pursue their NFL dreams as of Saturday night. Bauman inked a free agent deal with the Los Angeles Chargers, and Larson will join him in L.A. after signing with the Rams. Bauman's a 6'7" grad student from Sumas, Washington, quarterbacked the Vikings to their first outright conference title since 1959 last season. And after arriving at Augustana as a transfer by way of Montana State, Bauman operated 21 games under center, threw for over 4,000 yards and 43 touchdowns. As for Blake Larson, 6'7" senior from Brandon, South Dakota, concluded a career of 46 games played at Augustana by protecting a rushing attack that saw a running back eclipse 1,000 yards on the ground. Also held strong on a line that protected a quarterback that led the NSIC and ranked 13th in the nation in passing efficiency. All the best moving forward to quarterback Casey Bauman, to offensive lineman Blake Larson as they pursue their NFL dreams out west for the Chargers and the Rams, respectively. Moving forward now to let you know where other area guys got drafted or getting pro opportunities. South Dakota State running back Isaiah Davis became the 2nd Jackrabbit taken in the NFL draft over the weekend. He was selected in the 5th round Saturday afternoon by the New York Jets. Davis was the 38th pick of round 5 and number 173 overall. Joplin, Missouri native, earned Co-Missouri Valley Football Offensive Player of the Year honors and was a consensus All-America selection last year after leading the FCS division with over 1,500 yards rushing and 18 scores on the ground. Earlier on Saturday, Mason McCormick, Sioux Falls native, Sioux Falls Roosevelt graduate, was a 4th round pick by the Pittsburgh Steelers. The selections of Davis and McCormick marked the 6th time in SDSU program history that 2 Jackrabbits were drafted in the same year, and the 2nd time in the last 3 seasons. So Mason McCormick off to Pittsburgh. Isaiah Davis heads to join Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets. And Miles Harden was the presumptive only USD player that was likely to be drafted. That was the case on Saturday. Miles Harden was drafted in the 7th round by the Cleveland Browns on day 3 of the draft. Harden is the first Coyote to be drafted since Tyler Starr back in 2014. And Harden is the 17th Yote to be drafted into the NFL in program history. Certainly a lot to get to, a lot to recap, a lot to talk about today as we crank it open and get it off and running. The Monday edition of Overtime. When we come back, we'll be breaking down Augustana baseball. They've been playing very well. Look like they're primed for another run down to Cary, North Carolina for the D2 World Series. But we'll get the latest and greatest coming up next. Augustana baseball head coach Tim Huber joins us next on this Monday edition of Overtime right here on ESPN 102.3 AM 1000 KSOO.
Streaming live online and with the app, this is Overtime with Bert Remien on ESPN 102.3 and AM 1000 KSOO, Sioux Falls sports leader.
Right back with you on this Monday edition of Overtime. You ever miss any of the show? Podcast links are always available at ESPN-SiouxFalls.com or on the free ESPN Sioux Falls app if you're ever out and about and on the go. Speaking of somebody that's out and about and on the go, how about Augustana baseball head coach Tim Huber joining us on the road as they got a matchup later on today. 3 o'clock is the projected start time as they face off with Minnesota State to round out a 3-game series. Recently, an 18-game win streak for the Augustana Vikings. Joining us now on the ESPN hotline, longtime Augie baseball head coach Tim Huber. Coach, always a blast to have you. How you been?
I've been good. As you referenced, we had won 18 in a row here heading into this past weekend, and all was good. School record and playing pretty good baseball, pitching, hitting, playing defense, all those kind of things. So it was a good stretch for us for sure. And then Saturday hit, and we didn't have the same kind of day, but that's baseball.
Yeah, it is baseball. You can blame me. I reached out to you. I said, man, you're looking so good right now. What a team. 4 games in a row, double-digit scoring. And I say, hey, would you like to join us on Monday? You say, sure. And then your next 2 games are losses. Unfortunate, but you can blame me if you'd like to, Coach. What clicked so much in the 18-game win streak, and what has your guys excited for the stretch run here?
I mean, we've talked about this all year where we do have some talent on our team. And, I think that our guys just needed to get back to that understanding. And sure enough, as we started winning a few games, they started to realize oh, maybe we are pretty good. And again, the confidence showed up. And, once you start winning and you're feeling good about things, I don't say we played perfect baseball every game during that 18-game stretch, but there was a lot of good stuff we did. And, some of the things that were not so good, we just overcame because, again, they trusted that they were going to win games and just kept playing baseball. So, yeah, it literally was a little bit of everything. We did score some runs during that stretch, but we had some pretty darn good pitching outings. I think I don't know if we still are, we were leading the country in shutouts at our level. And so, I think that when you have those two things start to come into play and you're scoring 9 runs a game and shutting people out, it's hard to lose sometimes, right? So we had a good stretch going on for sure.
Oh, absolutely true. The overall record, 35-8, 26-6 in conference play. Let's talk a little bit about some of the accolades and broken records because it's an established program. This isn't like you guys are playing your best season ever and it's an outlier. You guys are pretty darn good all the time, especially lately. College World Series appearance last year, one recently as well that you guys won the whole thing. Let's talk a little bit about the accolades, broken records, and correct me if I'm wrong, career home run record and single season home run record both went down, right?
Yep, that's correct. Yeah, the 3 and 4 hole in our lineup has been a strength majority of the year. And you referenced the career stuff. You got to start with that just because of longevity. Dre Dirksen broke the career record. Nate Bauman had held that. Actually, Nate was at Augie when I got here. And I had thankfully Nate for 3 years. So I guess I helped him a little bit with his career record, but he had 49 in his career and it held for, a dozen years. And sure enough, Dre Dirksen comes along and he broke that this year. And Dre's just a big, strong guy. And I was happy that he got it because he's worked really hard. Dre's story is that he didn't play a lot for us his first couple years. Matter of fact, it took him, the end of his sophomore year before he finally got in the lineup somewhat regularly, and where Nate Bauman was largely a 4-year starter at Augie. And so Dre did it in a little bit less time and less at bats, but just a great accomplishment for him. And then Jack Hines, he's having a monster senior year. He's leading the conference in a lot of areas, and he's not just hitting home runs. You know, you referenced he hit his 19th and 20th, actually hit 20th here on Saturday. So he's got 20 home runs. So he's going to maybe be clear of the single season record by a little bit, depending on how his stretch run goes. And he's hitting over 400, and he's got a whole bunch of RBIs. I don't even know what he has now, 60 something. So he's just having a crazy, crazy good year, playing a really good shortstop as well. So just adding to the mix, he's been our guy and really carried us during stretches.
I got to ask you as well, I know they're on the bus with you right now, so hopefully you're not sharing a seat with one of them, but between those two guys, Dre and Jack, who is the more disciplined guy and the guy that cranks them out in BP a little bit better? Because certainly there's guys that are practice players and can slug it with the best of them in practice, and it's a little bit different when you're out there playing a game. These guys are both game players, but when it comes to BP, who's the better BP hitter?
Yeah, good question. So Jack's kind of ironic one. A lot of his home runs go the opposite direction, you know, so he'll hit home runs to right field more than he will to his pull side as a right-handed hitter. And so I think probably the answer there is Dirksen. He's a little more pull side type guy, which is going to lead to more BP type home runs. You know, you get into a game and the ball goes further when you got a live guy in the mound, all that kind of stuff. And so Jack can easily get that opposite field home run versus BP. It's a little harder to hit it the opposite way. So that's probably the short and easy answer to that question. And I think, you know, overall, Jack's got a lot of power, but he's not a home run hitter per se, whereas Dirksen is more of that guy, your prototypical, little longer home run type swing. And Jack's more just a contact line drive guy that happens to, this year, it's all come together and he's hit the ball over the fence a little more.
Talking Augie baseball with head coach Tim Huber. Vikings are 35-8, 26-6 in conference. Just 6 games to go in the regular season, then on to the NSIC tournament, and hopefully on to bigger and better things after that as well. Coach Tim Huber, our guest here on the Monday edition of Overtime. Saturday, we talked on it briefly. 7-2 loss, 14-5 the losses there against Mankato on the road. Today, 3 p.m. for Game 3. What are you looking for a response from your team today, specifically against Mankato?
Yeah, I think the word response is a good way to start that discussion. Just we have to show up and respond, be a little more present. You know, the message I told our guys after the losses was that let's remember this. This is just one day of baseball. You know, we won 18 games coming into today. We didn't play great baseball that day. We didn't have the same kind of energy. And frankly, Mankato wanted it. You know, they wanted to knock us off, and we had a 2-0 lead in the first game going into the 6th inning of a 7-inning game, and we had 2 C-nice singles, and then the middle of the order guy for them hit a big double that scored 2 runs, and then the rest of the day, Bert was just different. They just out-competed us, out-pitched us, out-hit us. They did everything better, and we lost 2 games. But then I told our guys as we finished our discussion on Saturday that, you know, you get an opportunity to come back here on Monday and understand that was just one day of baseball and we just didn't play good. So we right the ship and we get back on it on today, hopefully. And, you know, again, we're still a good baseball team. That was my message to them. Don't let today define you. You guys are really good, and let's show up and show that when we get back here.
Been a great baseball team all season long. Hoping it continues. 35-8, 26-6 in conference play. Remaining schedule at Minnesota State today, 3 p.m. Follow along. Watch at GoAugie.com. At Northern State Tuesday for a doubleheader. Doubleheader Friday, home to Minot State. And then the regular season finale scheduled for Saturday, 1 o'clock at Ronkin Field. Coach, before I let you go, I got a couple bus questions for you because you're on a bus, my friend. Let's talk about bus go-tos. What are you listening to? And please don't tell me you just don't listen to anything and you just sit there. Are you a podcast guy? You a music guy? You watching film? What are you doing right now?
It varies. If I'm listening to something, it's maybe something on Pandora, and you know, Red Hot Chili Peppers station has been a good one, but it's kind of funny. It dates me a little bit, right?
Oh, no, not at all.
I'm not I do like podcasts. I don't know why I don't do a ton on the bus. Usually because I'm getting ready for the next game or trying to do some work. So maybe I'll put some music on in the background if I'm listening to something.
All right. Last question here. When it comes to when you guys make the stops and you get out and you got an opportunity to go to Olive Garden or your favorite place that's a fast food spot, who's the biggest fast food or food liability on the team? And what is your go-to food selection when you're on the road?
Oh boy, that's a hard one. Well, I would say, we've done a couple like barbecue places. The biggest thing we try to do, and my GA does all this for me, Brendan Dye. Thankfully, I don't have to deal with it because it's a hassle to plan out for 30 plus people when you're on the road. But usually what he does is he finds a spot wherever we are that's different, like, hey, what's the best place in town? And again, like we found a couple barbecue joints that's been popular this year for whatever reason that, those towns we've been in. Outside of that, yeah, I mean, our guys like, they like the Chick-fil-A stuff for fast food. I don't know. It varies, I guess, just based on where we are is the short answer to that.
Hey, it's all good, and you guys are out on the road. 6 games to go, regular season, 35-8 for Augustana baseball. Coach, I hope we can catch up with you again soon here on the show. Go get them today, and we'll talk to you hopefully when the regular season comes to a close. Thanks as always for the time, Coach.
Appreciate it. Have a good one.
All right, Augustana baseball talk there. Head coach Tim Huber out and about on the road, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the start time. You can follow along with Augie Baseball at GoAugie.com. They lost on Saturday in a pair of games. Doubleheader in Mankato, 7-2. The first game, 14-5 in game number 2. And that's an oddity lately for Augie Baseball. They had won 18 straight games. Again, the overall record, 35-8. And they're sharpening their stone and getting the resume sharpened up as well for postseason play. NSIC tournament looms, 35-8. The overall record, 26-6 in conference play. When we come back, it's a quick check-in on the NBA. Latest odds as the Wolves officially block out the sun. Not literally, but the Suns are sent packing out of Phoenix, out of the playoffs, out of Minnesota. We won't see them again. Say so long to your Phoenix friends. Moving forward, Timberwolves likely to see the Denver Nuggets in round number 2. Latest odds, storylines, and more coming up next on Overtime. Hour number 1 concludes with NFL draft recap talk. Cole Thompson coming up to join us from Texans Wire and covering the broad strokes of the NFL draft. That's coming up next, Monday edition of Overtime.
Blessing.
ESPN's More of Overtime with Bert Remien on ESPN 102.3 and AM 1000 KSOO, Sioux Falls sports leader.
Right back with you. It's the Monday edition of Overtime. Got to be quick here. By the way, I'm looking to get in contact with Greg K. Greg was one of our 2 tied winners for the NFL Draft Prediction Contest. Greg and Wilson from Twitter tied. 35 total receivers taken. Greg had 33 as his guess. Wilson had 37. So we got a tie. We got to get sorted out. Greg, give me a call anytime, preferably during a break. Need to get some info from you, talk about the prize pack, and get this whole thing settled out. The Friday parlay in a draft edition package over the weekend. Greg K., one of our 2 winners. Give me a call as we go to break anytime. Love to hear from you. Get you hooked up with your prizes. NBA spreads tonight. Boston, 10.5-point road favorite in Miami. OKC, 5-point road favorite in New Orleans. And the Lakers, 7.5-point road dog in Denver, where the Nuggets might be without point guard Jamal Murray. Playing status in jeopardy for Game 5 in the series tonight after he was listed as questionable on the injury report because of a left calf strain. Questionable right now for Jamal Murray, and maybe the Lakers could help out the Timberwolves and continue to prolong this series against the Denver Nuggets. We'll wait and see. Not likely. Lakers 7.5-point dog. Elsewhere, the shorthanded Bucks head home in a 3-1 playoff hole against the Pacers. That is troubling as the spread on that game for tomorrow night favors Indiana on the road. 3.5-point favorite there for the Pacers. And lastly, let's get you some spreads and some odds here as far as Minnesota goes. We chronicled throughout the season, Timberwolves were roughly the 11th best odds or tied for the 8th best odds to win the NBA Finals. If you had to guess where they are right now, we'll let you answer, of course, in your car, by your radio, wherever you're listening to us. Think about where you would value the Timberwolves right now in the NBA, and I think you're going to be pretty darn close. They have the fourth best odds right now to win the whole dang thing. Boston plus 125, Denver Nuggets plus 215. Those are the favorites. Then you got OKC actually ahead of Minnesota plus 850, Timberwolves plus 1100. Rounding out the top five, the New York Knicks, and their fans very excited, looking to close out their opening round series in due time, plus 1400. They have the fifth best odds, followed by the Mavericks, Clippers, Pacers, Sixers, and the Cleveland Cavaliers to round out the top 10. That's a quick update on the NBA. More NBA talk to come later in the show. We will talk NFL and NFL draft next. Cole Thompson joins us of Texans Wire, SEC Unfiltered, and much, much more. He joins us next to break down the Texans draft, the Vikings draft, what other teams knocked it out of the park. One team that calls DC home was my favorite draft of the year. We'll talk about the Commanders. We'll talk about teams that swung and missed in the NFL draft and more. Coming up next, Cole Thompson joins us on Overtime.
Get ESPN with the free app and online. Grab your phone or call us up on your smart device. Now let's get you back to Overtime with Bert Remien on ESPN 102.3 and AM 1000 KSOO.
Bert Remien right back with you, wrapping out our number one, talking the NFL draft. Wrapped up on Saturday. We had undrafted free agency and that frenzy for all the nerds out there Saturday afternoon and evening into Sunday. And the roster's taking shape across the National Football League. Here to break down the draft, the swings and misses, the swings and hits, and the swings and home runs as well. Cole Thompson of Fan Nation joins us now on the ESPN hotline. Cole, always a blast to have you. Did you get a little bit of rest Sunday in recovery from the draft?
Oh, God, no. People think that, like, when we're done working, that it just is over and that we get to go enjoy ourselves. No, then we got to do free agent trackers. Then we got to follow up with, certain storylines that are going on. Then we have to listen to everybody complain about what picks were awful, and we'll end up actually handing out being pretty sufficiently awesome. We do this every single offseason, Bert. And so at this point, it's wash, rinse, repeat. Tuesdays are the days where I usually try to take a step back. So I got to get through today. And then tomorrow, that's kind of a day where I'm going to go sleep in a little bit, catch up on my Z's, watch some television, actually not be paying attention to sports for 5 seconds.
Well, again, it's a tough time to step away from the NFL this time of year. NFL draft now is in a concluded state, but certainly all sorts of grades out there, reaction. Before we go any further, I'm not going to ask a ton about the 2025 NFL draft, but I will ask you this. When it comes to Carson Beck, Shedeur Sanders, Quinn Ewers, do you have a favorite of those big quarterbacks that could go number one as of today? If you had to guess who goes number one, what's your best guess today?
Yeah, Bert, the crazy thing is that we talk about college quarterbacks, and the blessing that I get to have as somebody that studies both college and the NFL and is engulfed in both areas, is you can tell the difference between a great college quarterback and a good NFL quarterback. And sometimes it takes some years to develop into a more fluent, overall balanced, consistent quarterback at the next level. I feel like that when you look at next year's class, there really is a significant drop-off. Like, as much as I do understand the disregarding and the overall negativity surrounding a pick like Bo Nix very well would have been the first overall quarterback on my board next season if he were able to go back to Oregon for another year. That's how much of a drop-off there is between Beck, Sanders, Ewers. Even you can throw in guys like Jackson Dart from Ole Miss, Connor Whiteman from Texas A&M. There's sound quarterbacks, and there's a lot of upside and intrigue, but I have a lot of questions with them. I think that when you look at Beck, the accuracy, the footwork, the ability to stay in a very pro-style offense, cater extremely well to him, being a high draft selection, if he puts up the same numbers he did last year. Georgia did a really good job this offseason also bolstering up their passing attack with guys like Ben Yasurik from Stanford, and they brought over Colby Young from Miami. They upgraded the rushing attack with the Trevor Etienne from Florida. So they're in a really good spot where the numbers are going to be there, and I think it's the overall attributes are there. If I were to be a betting man right now, I'd say it's Beck. I wouldn't be shocked to see maybe a Jackson Dart if he can start getting a little bit more better with his footwork and his progression going into year 3 of this offense with Lane Kiffin. He might start garnering some buzz. I don't see it in Quinn Ewers. I see flashes of a potential with Shedeur, but I still have a lot of question marks. If you were a team that needed a quarterback in this year's draft, for the first time since 1983, we saw 6 gunslingers go in the first round. There's a reason for that. Sometimes you got to be looking 2 years ahead to be able to build for the here and now.
Certainly pretty interesting stuff, and more than likely the top pick will be somebody we haven't even thought about just yet. Cole Thompson of Fan Nation, our guest here. As far as biggest winners go, I'm looking at this kind of amalgamation giant board of everyone's draft grades, and the teams that are at the top 5 here, the Chiefs, the Commanders, the Eagles, the Bears, the Steelers, and there's all sorts of A-pluses and A's given to all sorts of teams out there, including the New York Giants, the Saints, and a bunch of other teams. If there was one team that you had to say won the draft weekend, and again, you only know with what they've selected and how you grade those players. We don't really know how they're going to turn out. What team did you like the most from over the weekend as far as what they did with their draft capital?
If we're really going to be nitpicking here, because I do think that there are some teams that did well. I thought the Patriots did extremely well. They got, in my opinion, the second best quarterback in the draft when it came to Drake May. I thought Indianapolis crushed it with their first 2 picks. I think that the value of what Biaggi Watkins can be is just out of this world. I think that Adonai Mitchell falling to 52 is great. But the one team that I walk away with saying they got better, they feel content, it all comes down to one major accolade. It's got to be the Pittsburgh Steelers. I loved everything about their draft, top to bottom. Troy Fautanu was a top 10 player on my big board. You got him at pick number 20. That's insane value for a versatile chess piece that can be a little bit of everything, can play anywhere on the line. You want him at tackle, put him at tackle. You want him at guard, put him at guard. I love to pick up with Zach Frazier. The thing about West Virginia this past year was they were so dynamic when it came to the spread offense that they were trying to run underneath Neil Brown. They did a great job in pass protection. And I think that's going to be an area where Zach Frazier comes in right away and steps up. They always seem to find that go-to wide receiver in the third round that makes headlines immediately. Roman Wilson can be that guy as the new Deontay Johnson in the slot. Peyton Wilson, from a grand scheme of just college football playing, was the best linebacker in the industry. And the fact that you got him right before pick 100 is just good value overall. There's a guy that you guys know very well, Mason McCormick, the offensive lineman from South Dakota State. I think that he was one of the few FCS prospects that I remember watching and saying, you put him on an FBS team, he could be an All-American. And now he gets to do that in the NFL. They top to bottom hit needs, requirements, consistency. They upgraded the areas of weakness. There is not that many flaws to this roster going into 2024, except for the main conundrum, which is what the hell are we doing at quarterback? Is it Justin Fields? Do we believe that Russell Wilson is just in a bad spot with Denver, but he can go ahead and refine himself with Arthur Smith's offense? Those are the main questions you have, but you don't really worry about the rest of the team. However, 85% of wins come from the man under center. And so, however that pans out is really going to determine what we see at Pittsburgh moving forward.
Pittsburgh Steelers, the consensus top overall team as far as the draft capital, their GPA, as they put it in grades among this big board put together. Cole Thompson, our guest from Fan Nation, talking the NFL draft. Give me the 1-minute lowdown on what you thought the Houston Texans did in the draft, and then secondly, let's talk about the Vikings, because everyone here in Sioux Falls and to our east out there in Minnesota, very excited about the future of the Minnesota Vikings. Talk Texans and Vikings now. What do you make of those two teams?
I think that when you look at a team like the Houston Texans, you have to include that they also use draft capital to get premier players. So I gave the draft as a whole a solid B. They got better at positions of weakness. Kamari Laster is just the epitome of what you think of a D'Amico Ryan's corner to be: physical, strong, plays bigger than his actual frame at 6 foot, really going to be an alpha dog for that defensive back. I thought Kalen Bullock, a really good player that you needed help with in the back end and the secondary. They were abysmal at times when asked to play in man coverage deep downfield. Bullock can do that for you. Then you include, again, the Joe Mixon pickup with the 7th round pick. Great value, good overall player. I don't agree with extending him when running backs become dime a dozen and there's $9 million, but still, it's an overall solid selection. I think when you also throw in what now became the 1st round pick in Stephon Diggs, it's good consistency, adding a veteran playmaker. I think that there is a giant difference between C.J. Stroud and Josh Allen, where Allen, at times, you've heard stories about being not complacent, but a little passive when it came to Diggs' antics. Stroud's not like that. Stroud came in by week 8 and immediately was demanding excellence from veterans, from 30-year-olds. And this is a 22-year-old that still is not even able to legally rent a car from Budget or Dollar Tree. I mean, like, that's what he's doing, and he's commanding a team like a franchise quarterback. So I think that their personalities will mesh well. The Vikings are a really weird team. It's really, really, really hard for me to break them down, bro, because the one thing they were missing after free agency was the quarterback. They let go of Kirk. They decided to move on. They thought about bringing him back, but they let go of the quarterback, and now they need the quarterback. The thing is that if they kept Kirk, they'd be still in this limbo of potentially being a team that could make it to the NFC Championship. And maybe if you play your cards right, you'll get to the Super Bowl, but then you weren't going to be able to spend money on defense. You weren't going to be able to go out and add in players like a Jonathan Gennard, like a Blake Cashman, like several others that I think will end up benefiting playing in this Brian Flores defense. And then you look at the draft in general, well, you stayed and played your game. You like J.J. McCarthy. I think he is the best fit for the style of offense Kevin O'Connell wants to run. And he's going to a good situation where the offensive line is stable. You have a decent run game with Aaron Jones coming on in. You have good weapons. It's just, you got 2 first-round picks. You could have been more aggressive and maybe got the quarterback that consensusly would have translated to any offense. Thanks, Daniels. So it's like you settled for the quarterback that we all knew that you were going to be forced to settle with because the asking price is going to be too much. Do you think that the game can elevate to a new level for him where he isn't going to be just basically the point guard of the team? Yeah, it's good to have a point guard, but at the same time, point guards, everyone wants to blow and boom, take over games, and they shoot 50 points. That's what you need from a guy in McCarthy. I thought Dallas Turner pick was fine. Listen, the translation from a defensive end to, from an outside linebacker to defensive end is going to come with its ups and downs. I think that he could end up being a really insightful player, but at the same time, I got to see a little bit more of him. I really like Kyrie Jackson. I thought that was a very good pickup for what they need in the secondary, and maybe this time around they'll see a kicker for the state of Alabama and they'll realize, hey, we should probably hold on hope to him because of we learned our lesson with Daniel Carlson, and that came back to bite us in the teeth. So maybe Will Reichert's the right answer.
And it might just very well be for the Minnesota Vikings. It's interesting because everyone the last week very excited about J.J. McCarthy, about Dallas Turner and the Fitz. And I think Minnesota, like you said, with Kyrie Jackson and others, pretty decent final rounds of the draft for not having a ton of picks as well. Lastly, Cole, before we let you go, when it comes to free agency, we saw Ezekiel Elliott sign a deal with the Dallas Cowboys. There's still a couple big names of the past that are out there. Michael Thomas, Odell Beckham Jr. Where do you think, or what's the biggest name right now? Could it be Justin Simmons? Who's the biggest name still available that a team might sign in the next week or so?
I feel like it's got to be Justin Simmons. This is still a top 10 defensive back. This is still a top 7 safety in the NFL. He's number 2 in interceptions among active players, and really the only reason he left was not because of he didn't think they do, not because of talent-wise in Denver. It was because of salary cap issues. They realized that after the entire dead cap space they were going to have to hit when they got rid of Russell Wilson, they couldn't afford to keep a lot of their players around, which is why this is the new era of Broncos football and one that is going to be a rebuilding one. So where I look at Simmons, this is really going to come down to him what he's willing to take in contracts. I've reached out to some people. They've said multiple teams have already reached out to his people, but it all comes down to asking price. Some believe it's down to years. Some believe it's down to annual salary. I think that at some point you have to find a common ground, whether it be a 2-year deal where maybe you take a little bit less money, but you also get a little bit more sustainability and cushion, knowing that you're locked in for a season or two, or you take the 1-year flyer deal and get the most bang for your buck and then try and test free agency next season. But to me, when I look right now, what is going to be the free agent market, Simmons has got to be at the top of that list. Afterwards, I think that maybe you can talk about Michael Thomas. I think there's still some good cornerbacks and a few defensive linemen available. This is where you're going to start to see teams make those 1-year rental moves, and you're going to see what players think of themselves. And do they want to hold out until the regular season starts, or are they just going to hold out? Are they just going to go ahead and enter and say, I'll bet on myself, and I'll probably gain some more money next offseason?
It's all intriguing stuff. Justin Simmons is also my top free agent out there right now. Great insight as always. Great NFL draft breakdown. Cole Thompson of Fan Nation, managing editor at the Texans Wire, and also contributes at SEC Unfiltered. Cole, always appreciate the time. We'll do it again soon, my friend.
Hey, Tom Bert. Thanks so much for having me.
All right, that's Cole Thompson once again at Fan Nation. You can find him on Twitter at Mr. Cole Thompson, MR Cole Thompson on Twitter. We will take the break. Come back with the top of the hour. By the way, still looking to get in contact with one of our draft contest winners. We had a tie, believe it or not, in our draft contest. I'm looking to hear from Greg K. Greg, if you're out there, dial me up right now, 605-362-3776, 605-362-3776. Congratulations. You didn't win it outright, but we had a tie. Hit me up right now. Get you some prize pack information and more. We're back with the top of the hour, headlines, highlights, and much, much more still to come on this day in history and more. It's Monday. It's overtime right here on ESPN Sioux Falls.